In this video, I want to give you a good overview introduction of using Adobe Animate. Throughout this entire semester, all of the projects we're going to do will use this software. Now, we're not going to do everything that Animate can do within the software. We're primarily going to be focusing on creating animation and getting you introduced to the most commonly used tools. So when you launch Adobe Animate, you can always go up to Create New to create a new document, or you can choose some predefined documents, or you can open up some recently opened documents down at the very bottom. If you create a new document, I'm going to hit Create New. This will give you a way of defining the size of the document that you want to work on. Now, there are some preset industry standards, things like if you wanted to create a game or a mobile ad or even an entire website, you can choose some of these predefined sizes based on whatever your needs are. For ours, we're usually going to be typing in some custom height and width, and that's where you can do it from here. You can also adjust your frame rate, and you can change your platform type. Now, for all of the projects we're going to be doing, the platform we're going to work in will be ActionScript 3. ActionScript 3 simply allows you to play and open and create all of your documents within the Adobe Animate software. However, if you're starting to create more complex things, especially for something created for the web, you can create things in HTML5 Canvas. Just know, Canvas cannot do everything that ActionScript 3 can. That's why we're using ActionScript 3 for our documents. When you say Create, this will give us a new document, an area to work in. Now, if you're used to working in Adobe software, a lot of this is going to look very, very familiar. We want to have open the most commonly used tools, palettes, and anything that you need in order to create and work through all of the projects for this class. So before you get started, you can always go up to Window and down towards the very bottom and see a variety of different workspaces. By default, everything that I'm ever going to work in will always be the Essentials workspace. This will open up the most common essential tools and palettes that you're going to need. But just know that if you want to do more design or developing or even other ways of laying this out, you can choose another workspace, and this will open up different kinds of tools and palettes and rearrange everything differently. To go back to it, we'll go up to Window, down to Workspace, and I'm always going to work in the Essentials palette. Next, if you ever need to locate a tool, you can find them over on the left-hand side inside of your toolbox. If you hover over any of these tools, you'll get the name of the tool, and if a tool ever has a little arrow at the bottom right-hand side of it, you can click and hold and select some similar tools inside of them. Another thing to know about any of the tools is there's a keyboard shortcut that allows you to quickly select that tool. So for instance, if I wanted to quickly select the lasso tool, I can just hit the L key. Now, if you can't find a tool that's on here, all you have to do is click on the very bottom of this to edit your toolbar, and this will open up some other less commonly used tools. From time to time, you may have to open this up in order to find a tool that you don't see from here. But in order to access it, all you need to do is click on it, and you can drag it into your toolbox and have access to it here. Another thing that you can do with your toolbox is be able to change the size of it. To do this, you can click on the edge of your toolbox and drag out. You can see how this will compress all of your tools down, but in doing so, you'll lose a little bit of workspace on the side. For me, I usually like to keep my tools nice and compressed off to this edge. At the very bottom of your toolbox, you can also see there's a color picker. Now, this is slightly different from older versions of Adobe Animate, but for the most part, you can choose your fill colors or your outline stroke colors from here. Also, once you select a tool, pay close attention to some of the options that may come up. For instance, when I selected my little paintbrush tool, with that selected at the very bottom, I do have a couple of different options that I can click and choose from to control that tool. Not all of these options are going to be available for different tools that you have selected, so making sure you have the right tool selected will open up those options. Also, with those tools selected, look over on the far right hand side in your Properties panel. The Properties panel gives you all of the properties for whatever tool you have selected, as long as that tool option is selected. So from here, the brush tool that I have, I can change the size of it, the amount of curvature, the angle, anything that I need to for that specific tool. If I was to choose another tool, like my text tool, you can see this tool has other options that allows me to change the text or the type and adjust it and edit it from here as well. Now also in your Properties panel, once you start creating objects, let's say I created a simple little square in the side of here, I can use my selection tool to select it, and the object itself can also have a set of properties. Notice that object is highlighted from here. Within the object, I can do things like change the height and width of it and dial it in specifically. I can even change out the fill and stroke color and other parts of the design of whatever object that I have. So just know, you can only access the object's properties if you have that object selected. Now if you don't have anything selected, I'm just going to click on my document itself. I can choose the document properties within the Properties panel. Changing up the document properties will allow me to change the height and width of the document. I can even do things like change the frame rate and other settings just for the document itself. So this Properties panel is very, very important. Later on, some other palettes like your libraries and assets are going to become handy in order to save multiple objects and have access to them later. So those are opened up by default. Just know that you have to click on the little tab at the top in order to see them. Now there are some other panels that are closed out right now. For instance, if I needed to access my swatches, I can hover over any one of these and open it up and be able to select swatches, or even a specific color picker, brushes. Any one of these will allow me to access those panels. If for some reason you can't find a panel, you can always go up to Window and you can see listed out all of the panels that are available. If there's a checkbox, that means that panel is already open and active. But if there is no checkbox, and let's say I need to open up my Actions panel, I can click on it. You can see it'll automatically open this panel, and in this case I can drag it around, and if I need to access it later, I can click on the title of it and drag it off to the side until you see a little blue area appear, and now I've pinned that panel to the side, and I can quickly and easily access it from here. At any time, if I need to get rid of the panel, all I've got to do is click on the name and drag it off, and I can click the little X at the top to get rid of it. The final most important panel to have open is going to be your timeline. Typically your timeline is either at the top or the bottom of your document, and for the most part I like to keep mine at the bottom. Within this timeline, this is going to allow you to animate whatever objects that you create by adding more or less frames to this timeline. Now we're going to go into depth with this within the exercises and projects later on. But I do want you to know, within the timeline, you can also add multiple layers from here by clicking New Layer and adding more objects and layers from here. And you can also group and delete away these layers by clicking on the trash can. We'll get into how your timeline is laid out and what you can do with this, like I said, within all of the exercises and projects for this unit. The final thing I'll show you is for your main stage. In order to navigate it, look at the very top right-hand side. From here you can adjust the zoom rate by zooming in or out, or even saying to show all and have it fill out the entire frame. At any time, if you need to move around, you can hold the spacebar down, and this will turn your icon into a little hand that will let you click and drag and move around and move freely from here. Otherwise, you can use your mouse or your trackpad on your laptop if you have that available too. Finally, if you want to save a document, you can go up to File and Save, and make sure all of your documents that you know where they're being saved to. In my case, on my desktop, I've created a folder called Digital Animation Classwork, and I'll want to make sure to save everything within that folder. All of the documents that you're going to be saving will be made in a Animate document FLA file format. So when I hit save, it'll save it out and be able to use from there. If you want to close out just the document, you can hit the little X at the top, and this will return you to your main start frame.